Yeah, hi, nice to be here. So there's still the same world of CSS out there, but we found a lot of ways how to deal with the shortcomings, or how to implement our own practices, or at least some best practices in how to deal with CSS. And I think most of you know the first two libraries that came out for preprocessing CSS, like Less and Sass. I was really amazed when a couple of years ago I was on the I think it was already the first Frontend United, which is called, where John Albin introduced Sass, and I said, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so today I try to present something else that also makes sense and is not that very different. So it's about PostCSS. The only show of hands for my session is who heard of PostCSS yet? Okay, everybody. So maybe the second, no. So yeah, PostCSS, it's named a little bit wrong. The contributors to PostCSS found that out and also removed the post-processor tag from the repository, because it's not actually post-processing CSS. It does, let's say it does processing of CSS. So at one point you shove a file in, and there are some plugins running, and at the end you get something new out of that, and that's plain CSS, which you can use in a browser. So, but for everything that is new, it needs to kind of say, somebody needs to step up and say why you should even use that. We have so many front-end libraries. There's like every second there's something coming, something new, and you don't really know if you have to, familiarize yourself with that. Does it bring any benefits and that stuff? So I should start with that to ratify why it makes total sense to use it. So there's a couple of points why that makes sense. One is, the first one is really simple. It's fast, but I think it's really the fastest thing out there. But fast we already have with libsass, which is really quite fast. But one other thing, what is really important for stuff, we noticed that in Drupal as well. You can use a module as soon as a lot of people are using it, because there will be a lot of people contributing, there will be a lot of extensions or things to make that right, and there will be a lot of documentation. So that's a fact. PostCSS, there's a lot of people using it. I see that already when I saw almost everybody raising the hand, at least heard of that. And then a concept that is also really important for me, at least, and I think for you too, because that's also the foundation on what Drupal is built. It's modular. So you really only put in what you need. You can pick your choices. You can say, hey, that's my workflow, or that makes sense to me. And you can take those modules, or in that context, it's called plugins, and pick what you need. And that's the other thing. Do I have to sit down for 3 weeks and do nothing else to adopt this to my workflow, or to reuse the stuff that I already did? No, you don't have to. It's just easy to or almost easy to transition from Sass. You can almost literally use the same style sheets you had before with some caveats, but they're not too big. And the last thing is also, for me as a developer, I like to, fiddle around with stuff, do my own stuff. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes not, but I always like the things where I can go in there and extend them or change the stuff. And I think the biggest point which kind of sold PostCSS to me was that I can have the future now. I will explain that a little bit later, but it's, looking forward into the future and the bright things coming, and using the stuff already now, we have with ES6 and all those fancy stuff. So let's go to fast. We like things fast. I don't have to talk about that very long, because you can see that from this list. That's, in comparison with Ruby, that's just blazingly fast and totally impressive. And it's still 1.9 times faster than libsass. So you're saving your file, and you don't even make it to switch to your browser if your screen is not big enough to show everything side by side, and the stuff has compiled already. So that's a neat, because it contributes to developer experience like that. So yeah, it's well adopted. There's a lot of people using it. This is the picture is kind of wrong, because I looked for a nice picture with people on them, and that's DrupalCon Amsterdam. So I don't think that everybody that was at DrupalCon Amsterdam is using PostCSS, but I can see that next year everybody's might be using it, or a lot of people at least. So, but also there, numbers speak. So that is NPM stat. So if you look at the downloads per week, you really see, okay, it has hit the 500K. So you know that is something that people are not only downloading to try it out, but to really use it. So I think that is a good foundation here. So, and a lot of you might already be using it, because auto prefixer, which most of the people I know love, is built on PostCSS. So you might already have it in your build workflow. There's auto prefixing, and that runs on the PostCSS. So, but how does the thing work? I always want to know how the stuff works, and how the inner workings of the stuff is, and it visualizes a little bit more on how we can use it, what happens in terms of modularity and extensibility. So it's, when I look at the slide, I don't know even why I put it here, but because it's so simple. From the overall picture of the architecture. So the CSS gets parsed, and then it gets run through all those plugins. They walk over those of those rules found in the tree of the CSS. They transform the stuff and spit it back out to the next plugin, and everybody has a say in how this gets transformed, and then it gets stringified, and you have new CSS that you can save to disk. So, and yeah, really, so from the first look, really simple. You need to, it's also important that the stuff you're using, it's easy to execute. So this is just an overview how you would do this without using something that like Gulp, but it's the same thing in Gulp basically. So you require the library, you have your string of CSS that here is represented as a variable input CSS. You have a array of plugins that you wanna run over that, and then you just call the PostCSS function and tell it what plugins to use, process the input, and then save it to disk or whatever, hand it over to the next thing. What you would probably do with Gulp. So. Yeah, so let's see some examples. We saw already the example of the auto prefixer, which runs over the selectors and looks it up in a compatibility table and just outputs in addition those vendor prefixes. So, but this is already one thing that kind of looks forward to the part where I'm talking about transitioning from Sass. So this is just an easy example of what one of the plugins does. It's called PostCSS Nested, and it gives you the functionality of writing nested whatever you call it, PostCSS, or in your file, and then process that into here the output CSS. And a little bit more, what has been can be done here, which is really interesting, because I don't think you really, I don't know if there's Sass plugins or anything that can do that. It just walks over the input CSS and finds the media queries and combines them into one. You know, you might really want to write them separate, because it kind of structures your files in a neat way. You have the selector and the declaration there, and after that you have the media query, because it kind of fits together, and you have that in a file that you call a module or anything. But here, you know, it packs that into one thing, and that contributes to file size, and you can like minify that later, but you know, that's the first step, and it really picks up on all those selectors finds. And since we're talking about, you know, minification, there's this project called CSS Nano, which also does some really nice things in not only concatenating and removing white space, but also going in there and finding duplicate properties, or, you know, outdated vendor prefixes that you might not even have in there because you're using auto prefixer, but you know, eventually you could have that. And, you know, normalize the selectors and all that stuff. So also really useful, and you can just drop it in. So I was saying it's not that hard to, you know, take your Sass stuff that you have been using and move over to PostCSS. So there's a couple of plugins that give you the functionality, you know, most of the functionality that you had in Sass. So there's PostCSS import that gives you imports, PostCSS simple vars that gives you the variables with the $, and there's PostCSS nested. We already saw a slide to that, and there's PostCSS mixins, and it gives you mixins. And the last thing, what I said, there's some caveats. So PostCSS mixins has a little bit a different syntax from what you used in Sass. So in Sass, it's add mixin for declaring a mixin, and add include, I think, for including the mixin in your selector. And here it's add define mixin for defining the mixin, and add import in Sass, and then it's add include. So to really transition there for your mixins, you would have to run some search and replace. But also there are already some projects that do that for you. Just you run a gulp post-CSS on your files, and then it spits out a new directory with the rewritten syntax. So. Yeah, and that wouldn't matter too much, you know. For our first projects that we did with that, I even did that manually. So I just went in, found the files where I defined my mixins, and just rewrote them with just a search and replace in my editor. And the good thing was I was not using Compass anymore. So I was not, you know, I stopped using Compass when auto prefixer came along, because most of the other mixins that you have with Compass are not, from my perspective, not that useful, you know, with all how CSS also has evolved. But you might have to do something if there's a lot of libraries giving you mixins like Bourbon and stuff. So that's a thing where you have to think about that. But, you know, not that hard, as I'm saying. So I talked about extendability before. So important part for such a thing, that you be able to also really implement your own stuff or make that fit to your needs or your workflow in this area. So This is an example of the PostCSS mixins where you can also define not only the mixins, define them in your CSS file, but you can just have a JavaScript function or a file with JavaScript function in it that defines a mixin. And the beauty of that is, you see that here it just returns an object that represents the same thing like you would get back from the mixin you write in CSS, but the beauty is it's just JavaScript. So you can go in there and make some square roots of stuff. Try to do that with Sass, calculate a square root or some things like that. So you can really solve some tricky things in there. So, and it's not that complex. Just define a function and return some object, and then you're good. So and really writing a new plugin is also not that complicated. You need to have knowledge about JavaScript, but yeah, it's just a JavaScript module that that exports this plugin. That's all. You see that's a PostCSS plugin boilerplate. So that's at first step all there is. So you return a function that takes in the CSS that has been parsed. And you might return something, or you might return nothing, but that's the basic structure. Maybe here an example that is not too complex. It's a plugin that's called PostCSS Focus, and basically what it does is it finds all the hovers and adds then also a focus selector, so that you don't have to write this all yourself. So when you look at that, you see that the function gets the CSS. There's apparently a function that has the name of walk rules, so it kind of should walk over those rules. And it finds a selector in there that has in the string has the :hover. And then it collects all those, all the items it finds in an array, and then it concatenates rewrites them, replaces hover with focus, and concatenates that with all that has been there, and puts it back in. So, not that hard. There are obviously some things you need to know about those functions, the walk rules and whatnot. But I think that you can look that up if you're a little bit familiar with JavaScript, and then you can write your own plugin there. So, and many people have done that. So that have been a lot of pros, but there's cons too. It's practically, the same cons that you have with Sass. But since you can also put in your own extensions or define some stuff in JavaScript, you can, make even a bigger mess. So you have to hold back on that. So also here, you can, like I had that before, PostCSS nested. Don't nest the stuff all the time, but because you end up getting, like if you remember the talk, the keynote this morning, where he was talking about like having those descendant selectors and why this is not a good idea to have them in there. So, but on the other hand, PostCSS gives you the possibility to just remove that plugin, because that would be only a small part that you would have to write yourself. So there's no temptation of doing some nestings that you might never need. So that's also a good thing. So you have to be careful, but in the right hands, it's a good tool. So, and there's really the thing that really, as I said, sold me on PostCSS. So the headline is "The Future Now." So there is a really cool plugin that's called CSS Next. And yeah, it gives you a lot of nice features that are currently in the works in the CSS specification. If you go to the website for every of those functions or features, there's also a link to the current specification on the CSS documentation. But you can see here there's a lot of interesting things you might be already using, but that have fallbacks or make them kind of better, like the reduced calc, where the PostCSS is trying to figure out if you can write the calc values or the string of values that are shall be computed, if you can make them simpler, if you really even need to do some multiplication in there or not, because it's 1 EM times 2, so that's just 2 EMs. You don't need to have a calc there. Yeah, and a lot of other really nice things, but you know what I really loved was the custom properties and the var function. And that's also something that picks up on the talk Harry gave this for the keynote. He talked about immutability and how you shouldn't change values or change the properties of your selector for a media query. So that's actually, on one end, it's a little bit opposite because it's real variables, not the constants that we're using at the moment to set our variables with the color or with the size. But it's actual real variables, so they can change in different conditions. But also they separate really nicely because it's just a variable. It has a variable value, and you can apply it somewhere, and you don't have to mess with the rest of your declaration for your attributes and stuff. So what that means is you can define a variable here. It's called -- gutter. You know, the syntax is not that beautiful, but that's how a lot of stuffs in those CSS specifications are. But you define a variable on the root of gutter, and that has 1.5 VMs. And then later on in a media query, you just change that value because based on this media query. And with another media query, you change that value again. And then you're able to write your container and your grid or your grid cell or whatever you need. Maybe if it's a color that needs to change, you could just stick your variable in there. That's the declaration where it says var brackets and -- gutter, or in the case then the computed gutter negative and that, and your definition of the attributes of or the values for the attributes in your selector, they don't really change, because you have one variable in there, and that's what the thing that changes. So that's really nice. And also inspired by this morning's talk, I was picking up on the topic we heard there. So it was about like CSS not being a programming language. It isn't. I think it will never be. But those things came to mind. So there's a calc function, there's a color function, there's a function to evaluate those variables. We kind of have stuff that is conditionals like not and matches. So let's see what happens in the future if we stay there at that place where we are, where we have more descriptive language, or if it will evolve to a programming language. I don't know, but that's a topic for I think another talk. Yeah. So I think I was good on time with my talk. I have a couple of links here. There's a nice article on Smashing Magazine that was an introduction a good while ago to PostCSS. There's obviously the GitHub project for PostCSS. And they have a list of all the plugins. It's, I think 2 pages long. And to not read them all and to figure out what you can use them for or what else could be there. There's even the PostCSS.parts website where you can just have an auto-completion search on terms which you would like to find in the plugins. We can have a look at that. And for an easy start, we wrote on our GitHub for Wunderkraut, we have a gulp task PostCSS that you can basically just chuck into your project, and it will it is configurable, so you can just tell the plugin the gulp task what processes you want to need and where your source and output files are. So that should be an easy start. Yeah. So that's me. So if you wanna talk with me or chat with me via electronic devices, it's at pixelmort. It's the same on Drupal.org, and I think the same everywhere, even on gaming platforms or wherever you want to find me. I think you would find me with at pixelmort. So since we have a little time, I can just look up a couple of that stuff. So here's the article. It has a nice overview, also benefits of all that. Here's a blog post of a guy that transitioned from Sass to PostCSS with good reasoning why he did that and how he did that. So that kind of also summarizes some of the stuff that I said. Yeah, here's the PostCSS import. So I think we have kind of seen them, and it's same, and nothing different from what you used in Sass. There's your simple vars, where you can declare your variables with $. So that's nested. We saw that. That's the mix-in stuff. So we can have a closer look here. So you can define the mix-in like that, as you may be used to it in Sass with at define mix-in and add mix-in. That's it. I got it wrong. To put it in, and this is the way you could define a mix-in in JavaScript. Even here, look like read files from the file system. So also one thing where you can really do crazy stuff if you like, or really advanced stuff if your project requires that. And you could also just go in there and just return an object, a named object, and then that will be also okay. Yeah, that's the MQ Packer where you see the what I took from there from the media query packing, order prefixer. I don't think I have to say much of that. Here's the CSS Nano project, showing a little bit what it does. Here's a good list of features. No, what it all does. So really handy tools there. That's the GitHub project. So that's the website of CSS Next. So here you can see what I talked about, like with custom properties in var, and there's a link to the specification, and then you can look this up on the W3C, what they are at the moment doing, thinking about that and documenting that. And what I didn't mention, you don't have to include the whole CSS Next suite of plugins. You can also pick those you need. So if you only want to have those custom vars, or you only want to have the reduced calc or the color function, so you just there's a separate plugin project for that. So you can just choose what you need. So that was the article of Philip Walton, who talked about those native CSS variables. That really, made sense to me, and where I started, how to use to figure out how to use that, and to really work on the PostCSS stuff and not see that as a big chore. Yeah, that's what we saw, the focus thing. Yeah, here, the plugins. So here's kind of an overview that they're giving in their README here. All those plugins, we saw a lot of those. There's even plugins where you can do like CSS modules or BAM syntax, where you can really declare in a like structured way your BAM selectors. It really depends if you want to use that. Sometimes too much tooling is also not okay. But so also another reason where I say, hey, reduce the stuff and use only what you want. So here, that's PostCSS parts. You can start searching here for like grid, and you see, okay, there's grid and neat and lost and I don't know what, old school grid. So that should be fine for like somebody that is old like me. I could use old school grid all the time. So yeah, that's the repository where we keep our gulp task. You can just require that with gulp and be happy and start using it. It's a little bit opinionated. It has a lot of, it is longer than it might need to be, but you know, we needed something that is configurable and works well with other gulp tasks that we also contributed. So, but you can look through that or just use it. Yeah, so that's about it. Frontend United. I done my thing. I hope I worked all right for you. And so if anybody has questions, I don't know more stuff. That's all.
No one has questions?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's so simple. You don't have to,
We do.
Oh, yes, we do.
Can you parse Sass files?
Yeah. You can parse, text files. You just have to, use gulp, say, hey, this is my text file. Currently, I renamed my files to like p.css. Later on, I found out there's a plugin for at least Atom. PHP Storm is a little bit hard, but I renamed the files to just declare them as CSS files so that I don't only get some errors when I'm, writing my stuff. But there's linters and stuff what you can use there to, really track down if you have some broken syntax there. But yes, you can parse anything you can load, I think. I'd never tried a text file, but since, so you could use your old SCSS files, but, the mix-in thing. Yeah?
I had a very fierce discussion with some colleagues that convinced me that both Sass and PostCSS could coexist. You use the one and use the other thing, and I had the impression that, no, you want to go away from that and go to PostCSS, and then you stick with that and don't any longer use that. So what you're proposing, are there really places both tools at the same tool chain? Or?
So now I should really repeat the question, but that's a good thing to do. So yeah, the question was, can you use, or does it make any sense to use Sass and PostCSS together in one project? I think the quick answer is no, but I can see some reasoning behind of, you have legacy stuff, or you have really something, you cannot really get rid of what you need in Sass or that. So you can could construct a scenario where that would make sense. I would always opt for looking at your older stuff and refactor that and embrace the new possibilities that you have there. But from the technical perspective, it is totally possible. You can run gulp over the SCSS stuff, and you can run another gulp process with PostCSS, or you kind of can combine those. Like Auto Prefixer is working on that, is working like that. There is a PostCSS -SCSS project, which is only for parsing. So you don't, that the syntax of Sass is then really understood. But, you know, I don't think it makes sense. But, you know, that's me. I like clean. You know, you should not look at my project, but I really, from my heart, I like clean. Yeah?
For a lot of big projects, refactoring everything to PostCSS has really been feasible, but for that prefixture was brilliant.
Yeah.
And PostCSS works really well on the end of the Sass process to have that auto prefix layer.
Yeah.
All those other plugins like auto prefix, so that they're the same, at least in those environments. I found that using both isn't such a bad thing.
Yeah. So you said there is a point where it makes sense to use that way, and the first point you made was auto prefixer is doing just that. Yeah. So why not? If that's the last missing piece in your, or the second last or whatever missing piece in your project, and other than that you want to stick there, it's just a tool, you know. It helps you get your work done better. And so if you have this, the thing you want to solve, that's one of the better tools, because it's using JavaScript, and at least for me, that's a way where I can really deal fast with some problems, because I just know that, you know.
I was not seeing on not use PostCSS because they worry about refactoring the whole thing, you know, that steps.
Yeah.
Steps to something.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, you have to, as always, for the bigger projects, you have to really plan what you are able to refactor, what merits the time. Does it really give you a benefit? Because at the end, it's not only us developers that are really happy to be able to delete 5,000 lines of code, but there's also the client that, you know, needs to benefit from the project. And so, you know, I would do the step maybe for the next project or for the next release of a given project, and maybe start, like you said, maybe it's not that wrong to start with baby steps, you know, and try to do some stuff that were really hard using other concepts that, you know, get rid of like nested if-else clauses in Sass that really annoyed you and maybe didn't even work. So, do we have time for some? Yeah. There in the back?
Oh, yeah. With so many plugins available and so many different things, how do you deal with the order you should run them in so they don't synchronously run? At least not in a bad way?
Yeah, so that, you know, that shouldn't matter, but it can. Since everybody can write his own stuff, so you can run into situations where you need to see what in which order those plugins should run. But, you know, since they all have their kind of single responsibilities, what they need to do, that shouldn't be that hard to, even if you have to pay attention to that, it shouldn't be that hard, because you really should know, okay, this is transforming this and that, so you know, that might be a good case. But, you know, if all those plugins are well written and, you know, think about that fact, we should never run into those problems. But I think, yeah, you can totally have that you need to pay attention. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there in the middle.
How do you keep your projects consistent? Because I can imagine if you have like a project from a month ago that you use some different plugins and you don't remember what you can use in that version.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question was how to keep your projects consistent, and I think that if in a real big, a lot of team members working together on various projects, that is a thing you have to think about. but my experience for most of that is, and I work with a lot of colleagues, that every project is kind of different. If you remember the thing that we have in Drupal 7, you know, and in Drupal 8 that has shifted just a little bit, but the base themes. So it was kind of a brilliant thing. You had a base theme and you extended that with your own theme. But did you ever go in there and update the base theme and worry about how this would work out and if this would break something? So and even not thinking about needing to upgrade that because there might be a security patch in this base theme. You rarely touch that stuff again or say, hey, that has to be totally the same. So what we're doing, I'm in a company with a lot of developers where a lot of different approaches are, and there's not everybody is using PostCSS, totally the opposite. So it's a couple of people trying that out now with me. I think it's more important to kind of get together and find a good approach to do some stuff like we have with BAM and Smack CSS, and think, how should we do the things that in the end, the real tools that you use for that do not matter that much. So yeah, sure, if you look at that from I'm taking over that project and need to know what I have in there perspective, okay, you still have to look at your package.json and figure out what is in there, or at your gulp file for this process. But yes, but I think projects are different, and so it doesn't matter if they have slightly different workflows in them or use different plugins. And you have to go in there and find documentation or talk to the people that did the project, or try to bring back your memories about the project anyways to be able to work on something. So that is just the part where you say, hey, what did we use for plugins? And you always have the possibility to just forget about it. Then you still have CSS. Yeah, there's one in the middle there.
How do you deal with the third-party libraries that will provide CSS for less time?
Yeah, that's, so the question was, how do you deal with third-party libraries that provide SCSS and that, maybe Bootstrap. There's also a project that deals with that and rewrites, then, checks out Bootstrap and rewrites from Sass to PostCSS. But I don't have the total answer for that, because I'm more like, look at that framework and pick this component. So like I like to get my buttons from semantic UI, and I'm getting my drop down from maybe Bootstrap, and I'm using this breadcrumb thingy from Bourbon or Neat or whatever is out there, because I kind of like how they implemented that, and then I'm plugging that in into my project. So I'm rarely starting with something that is a fixed library, because I have to throw stuff out. I have to really track down all the things, and it's not only the grid you don't want to have. Even if it's separated out in a lot of components, there's still so much that I didn't get for removing. So I'm more like in other way around, putting stuff in there. And when you do that, you can also look at that and see, hey, do I need that mix in? Does it make sense? And then rewrite it, because it's only a search and replace away. But yes, you cannot just say, hey, Bower install whatever, and try to compile that with PostCSS. You have a good chance that it might work, but you have a bigger chance that you have to go in there and do some tweaks on that. And that you're not able to do some Bower install a new version again. So you have to maintain that stuff. But there's so many people using the PostCSS stuff. So yeah, So, and if you check out the current dev code of Twitter Bootstrap, it has a gulp task for PostCSS in there. I wonder why that is. Yeah. So there's one in the back.
Well, I think there are still a few things that should be considered. For example, we use the keystorm as a perfect integration for Sass, for example, for all the variables, for all the listings, for all the stuff that we just internet and jumps in and works. That's out of the box. I think it's far more complicated to bring all the small post-CSS nuisance into PHP from working. The other thing is your speed comparison at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It was about four plugins of PostCSS, right?
No, it was a list of 6-7 libraries that do this kind of the same thing, processing CSS. So here, there's PostCSS and there's rework. I never used it, but there's libsass, which is a C implementation of the Sass compiler. What?
What I'm talking about is more like nested rules, mixers, variables, that
Yeah.
are parts of the PostCSS mixer or plugins of PostCSS as in comparing the listers and all this stuff. And I think when you put more and more PostCSS plugins in, the speed difference will not be such big. Maybe it's still faster, but it will become a bit slower.
Yeah. So, yeah. So let me answer the second question first, because you will tell me the first one again, because I just lost track of that. Sorry. So the speed thing, you know, it's not an absolute speed thing. You never can be sure that it's always 39 milliseconds. So yes, but and I'm totally sure that you're right. The more plugins you add, the more work has to be done, and the kind of slower it gets. But we are starting from a really, really good level there. So I don't think that you will ever go in there and consider that as slow or anything like that. So we will still be pretty fast. I never measured that myself. I took it here from their own repository where they did benchmarks. You have to reproduce that yourself, but I think those numbers hint at a really nice speed. And for me, it doesn't really matter. But 1,000 milliseconds, that matters. Apart from having to install Ruby and maintain that with gem files and all that. But I don't want to talk about that. Yeah. So remind me, what was your first question you asked before the speed thing?
The first thing I was saying was that PHP Storm has a very good
Yeah.
integration. Also,
Yeah.
I think it has a very good integration
Yeah.
for Sass already, for all the mixers.
Yeah, I remember that. So the PHP Storm integration that is for Sass is very well laid out, and there's really usable tools there, and for PostCSS there aren't. But so the guys at JetBrains, they're doing really good work on keeping up to speed with all the stuff that is coming out, and there's also a very good community that does plugins for PHP Storm. So I think that this pain point will get better there. It will maybe never be totally all right, because you can write your own plugins that do weird things, or need a kind of freaky syntax that you cannot just put in a plugin because you don't know what the people are doing. But I think a lot of that other stuff that helps you write code faster and in a more reliable way, I think it will happen. Yeah, it already happens in those other editors where you at least have syntax support and that, and and also. The compatibility to Sass is not the core thing that I wanted to promote here. I think the road towards some stuff that we can use in CSS maybe in 1 year, or maybe in 2 years, if it takes really long. It takes really long to write those specifications and get those really out the door for the W3C. But that's a thing, you know. At one point, you know, it's always what you're hoping, that you have to just drop out the PostCSS that deals with that stuff, and only have some others in there where you need utilities, but be able to use that and transition away from a lot of things that we're doing now. And that, I think that's a you know, a good pro for me. Yeah. Yep.
I just want to follow on to that point, basically. I use Python because I have PHP, but same thing. If you set all your CSS files to Sass files and you use PostCSS pre-CSS, all your integration works. So you get all integration for variables and rest of it, mixing, nesting. You can actually use PostCSS as the PHP store completely fine. All you need to do is just basically assign every CSS file to star.sss.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, you're right. So that you were talking about that PHP Storm already supports a lot of the stuff. If you do a little workaround, that's what I mentioned, where I just went in there and renamed my files. So I have something that is not SCSS or not Sass that I could assign to those file types, and I just put in .p.css. I saw that later on the convention for some of the plugins, like in Atom, they use just .pcss. But you know, the thing is just telling PHP Storm this is a Sass file, and then you have half the errors away, or 3/3 of the errors away, and you get some of the functionality that you are used to in PHP Storm. Yeah. So yeah, good point. So half the pain is away there. Yeah. So. Very good. Seems we ran out of questions because I'm also run out of, you know, tongue muscle. No, that's very good. I really love that you had a lot of questions. That tells me that the topic is interesting. Thank you very much.